Welcome back to Reformed Thinking. I am so glad you're here with us. Today, we are opening up a book that has been sitting on my desk for weeks, and honestly, it's a little intimidating just looking at the size of it. We are cracking open the Treasury of David.
It is a mammoth work. I mean, 7 volumes.
7 volumes of what a lot of people consider to be the greatest commentary on the Psalms ever written. And the author is, of course, the Prince of Preachers himself, Charles Haddon Spurgeon. But we aren't trying to tackle the whole library today. We're zooming in.
Way in.
On a single text. We are looking at Psalm 64.
Which is a very specific choice. It is, it's not one of the comfortable ones.
No, it is not. This isn't the Lord is my shepherd. This is gritty. This is dark.
Mm-hmm.
But it leads us to a picture of God that I think we really need right now. We're going to look at the safety of the believer when the world feels like it's closing in. And we're doing it through Spurgeon's lens.
And we should probably clarify for everyone listening what the Treasury actually is. Because Spurgeon didn't just sit down and, write 7 volumes of his own opinions from scratch.
Right, he was more like a curator.
He was a collector, a master collector. He went through centuries of church history, the church fathers, the Puritans, medieval theologians, and he just handpicked the best insights on every single verse.
So when we read Psalm 64 today, we're not just hearing from Spurgeon.
No, not at all. We're going to be hearing from men like John Donne, the poet, Augustine, John Trapp, Jeremiah Burroughs. It's like a great cloud of witnesses, all gathered around this one prayer of David.
It's a fantastic shortcut to being well-read, really. You get the best of the best all in one place. So let's set the scene for the psalm, Psalm 64. What is the context here?
Well, the superscription is simple. It just says a Psalm of David. That's it. But the content, it just screams conflict. Spurgeon notes right at the beginning that David's life was basically one of almost constant warfare.
Yeah, that's true.
It was very, very rare for David to write a song that didn't mention an enemy somewhere.
He was a man of blood, in a way. The Lord even said so.
He was. I mean, think about it. He fought lions and bears as a kid. He fought Goliath. He was hunted by Saul. He fought the Philistines. And then, in the deepest tragedy, he fought his own son, Absalom.
Conflict was just the air he breathed.
It was. And Spurgeon points out that in this specific psalm, David's thoughts are almost entirely consumed by the cruelty and craftiness of the men trying to destroy him.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to unpack this prayer. We need to look at the anatomy of fear, the very specific weapons the enemy uses, which Spurgeon gets really descriptive about.
Oh, he does.
And then the best part, we get to see the sovereignty of God stepping onto the battlefield. Spurgeon calls him the divine archer.
I love that title, the divine archer. It suggests that while the wicked have their bows and they're good with them, God has a better one.
He definitely does. Okay, so let's get into section 1, the voice of prayer. The psalm opens with, "Hear my voice, O God, in my prayer."
And we should stop there for a second because Spurgeon does. He just latches onto that one word, voice.
Hear my voice. It seems simple enough.
It seems like a throwaway detail, doesn't it? Of course he's using his voice. But Spurgeon, being Spurgeon, asks a theological question here. Why does David specify his voice? I mean, does God need acoustic vibrations to hear us? Does he have ears in the human sense?
And we know the answer to that is no. God is omniscient. He knows what we're going to ask before the neurons even fire in our brains.
Correct. Spurgeon calls it mental prayer, and he says it's fully heard by God. God weighs the spirits. You do not need to make a single sound to reach the throne of grace. But, and this is his point, using your voice is often for your benefit, not for God's.
How so? What does that do for me?
Well, think about the nature of the human mind. We're so easily distracted. If you try to pray silently for 10 minutes, what happens? Be honest.
Oh, I started thinking about lunch, or I remember an email I forgot to send, my grocery list.
Your mind just wanders. It's untethered. Spurgeon suggests that the physical act of speaking of forcing air through your vocal cords, articulating words, hearing your own voice with your own ears, it constrains the mind. It puts fences around your thoughts.
It anchors the prayer in reality. It makes it concrete.
It does. It gives it a channel. It focuses your devotion and keeps you from drifting off into 1,000 other things.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
But being the balanced theologian he is, Spurgeon immediately flips the coin. He doesn't want us to become legalistic and think we must speak out loud to be heard. So he brings in this amazing counterexample from the book of Exodus.
The story of Moses at the Red Sea.
Yes. And I want you to just picture that scene for a moment. The Israelites are trapped. The Red Sea is in front of them, this massive, impossible barrier. Behind them, you have the dust cloud of Pharaoh's chariots. The most powerful army on earth is coming to slaughter them.
And the people are losing it. They're panicking.
Total panic, screaming, chaos, crying out against Moses. And there stands Moses. Now, if you read the text in Exodus carefully, it never says Moses spoke a word out loud. He's just standing there, in the silence of leadership, trying to hold it all together. But then God speaks to him.
And God asks him a really strange question. Why criest thou unto me?
Why are you crying out to me? But wait a minute, Moses hadn't said a thing. His lips were sealed.
So his heart was screaming.
That's the paradox Spurgeon just loves. He says that the prayers which are unheard on earth may be the loudest things in heaven. The silence of a believer who is so traumatized or so overwhelmed that they can't even form words, that silence rings like a bell in the ears of God.
That is incredibly comforting. Because there are seasons when you are so beaten down, you literally can't find the words to say.
And God hears that frequency perfectly. But here in Psalm 64, David is choosing to speak. He's choosing to use what Spurgeon calls his battle axe.
That's what he calls prayer here, a battle axe.
Yes. It's not a pillow, it's a weapon. He says David uses prayer as his all-purpose tool, his primary weapon. He uses it against inward sin, against outward wrath, against domestic rebellion, against foreign invasion. It's his go-to for survival.
And that brings us to the specific request he makes in the second half of verse 1.
Right.
Preserve my life from fear of the enemy.
I want to just highlight that word fear.
I noticed that too when I was reading it. He doesn't say preserve my life from the enemy. He says from the fear of the enemy.
And that is a massive distinction. You can be physically safe, sitting in a locked room completely out of reach of your enemies, and yet be utterly destroyed by the fear of them.
It's the psychological warfare aspect of it.
It's the dread. It's the anxiety that wakes you up at 3 a.m. It's the terror. Spurgeon points out that we need protection from the idea of harm just as much as, if not more than, the harm itself. Terror can paralyze a man long before a sword ever touches him.
It reminds me of that saying that we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
So true. And Spurgeon gives us a prescription here. It's a very Puritan-sounding phrase. He says, with all our sacrifices of prayer, we should offer the salt of faith.
The salt of faith. What does he mean by that?
Salt was a preservative. It was also part of the Old Testament offerings. His point is that you have to believe that God is actually capable of protecting you. That belief, that trust, is the salt that makes the prayer effective in your own heart. It's the only thing that quiets the fear.
If you pray but you don't trust, you're just worrying with your eyes closed.
You're just verbalizing your anxiety. You haven't actually handed it over.
Now, there's a linguistic note here from John Trapp. He was one of those English Puritans who just had a way with words. He comments on the word life.
Trapp is fantastic, a master of the pithy comment. He points out that the Hebrew word here is actually plural. It's lives.
Preserve my lives.
Right, which sounds odd in English, but Trapp argues that this covers the many faculties and revolutions of a person's existence. You have your physical life, yes, your heartbeat and your breath, but you also have your spiritual life. You have your domestic life, your family, you have your civil life, your reputation, your standing in the community.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because when an enemy comes after you, they rarely just want to kill your body. They want to destroy your name. They want to ruin your family. They want to dismantle everything that makes you you.
They want to wipe you off the map entirely. So the prayer is comprehensive. Lord, protect my lives, all the different spheres where I exist. And that's a great transition into verse 2, where David asks for a specific kind of protection, a hiding place.
He says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked.
This sets up a contrast that runs through the whole psalm. You have the secret counsel of the wicked versus the secret providence of God.
It's like a spy novel.
Yeah.
Counterintelligence.
In a way, yes. The wicked have their counsels of malice. They're in their dark room, plotting, whispering, scheming. But David appeals to God's counsels of love. He asks to be hidden in God's secret place, to be brought into a better conspiracy. And Spurgeon makes an observation here that I think goes against our natural instincts.
What's that?
He says it's a good thing to conquer your foes. We all want to win the fight. But he says it is a better thing to be screened from all conflict entirely.
To be hidden from the strife.
To be so tucked away in God's providence that the battle doesn't even reach your doorstep.
That's a fascinating shift in perspective. Usually my prayer is, God, give me the strength to beat this guy, or God, help me win this argument.
Right. And Spurgeon is suggesting a higher prayer might be, God, hide me so well that I don't even have to argue. He says God knows how to make quiet. He is more than a match for their deep-laid plots.
It creates this image of the believer in a bunker or maybe a high tower, while the enemy is running around on the ground floor just completely lost trying to find them.
And failing. The noise and the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, as the King James Version puts it, it's all happening outside the walls. But inside, there is peace.
But outside those walls, things are getting pretty scary. And this brings us to section 2, the arsenal of the wicked, verses 3 and 4. And I have to say, the imagery David uses here, and that Spurgeon unpacks, is visceral.
It is. It is not abstract at all.
Verse 3, who whet their tongue like a sword.
Let's talk about that word whet. It's an Old English word we don't use much, but it means to sharpen.
But it implies a process, doesn't it? It's not just sharp.
It implies friction, it implies time and effort. Spurgeon notes that this isn't a sudden outburst of anger. This isn't someone losing their temper in traffic and yelling something they regret 5 minutes later.
This is premeditated.
This is cold-blooded preparation. He compares it to a warrior sitting by the campfire the night before a battle, taking out his whetstone and grinding it against the metal of his sword. Shuck, shuck. He's feeling the edge with his thumb. He wants to make sure that when he swings it, it cuts deep.
That is a terrifying image when you apply it to speech. It means the slanderer is sitting at home, alone, rehearsing the lie.
They're refining the phrase. They're workshopping it. They're asking themselves, how can I say this in a way that does the most damage? How can I twist this truth just enough to make it a lethal falsehood? Spurgeon says they rub the lie against their malice until it is razor sharp. The goal is to wound desperately, to kill the honor and reputation of the victim.
And then David immediately switches the metaphor. He moves from the sword to the arrow. And bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words.
And the difference is critical. The sword is a close-range weapon. If you're going to slash someone with a sword, you have to look them in the eye. You have to be in the same room, close enough to see the damage.
But the arrow?
The arrow is for distance. Slander is the original long-range weapon. You can destroy a man's reputation in a city you've never even visited. You can ruin a woman's life from behind a keyboard anonymously from thousands of miles away.
Spurgeon talks about how the Orientals, as he refers to the culture of the Bible, practiced insult and nicknaming almost as a fine art.
He does. He notes that in that cultural context, sarcasm and verbal abuse were highly developed skills, but then he warns his readers, and this is very relevant for us in the West, not to feel superior because we are more polite.
Right, he says our manners might be more refined, but the less apparent venom causes just as much pain, if not more.
It's the innuendo, the shrug, the whisper. It's the polite assassination.
This is where he uses that crazy illustration. He describes visiting a museum in Venice.
Yes, the instrument of the Italian tyrants. He talks about seeing these glass cases filled with all sorts of medieval weapons, and among the broadswords and maces, he saw these tiny little needles.
Needles, like sewing needles.
Very similar. They weren't these big, intimidating weapons. They were delicate, but they were designed to be shot from a mechanism, like a blowgun, and they were dipped in deadly poison.
So you wouldn't even see it coming.
It would feel like a mosquito bite, a tiny prick, but it was death. Spurgeon compares that to the polite gossip of our society. It isn't a loud shouting match. It's a tiny needle. It's a whispered comment at a dinner party. Did you hear about so-and-so? It's a little shrug, a raised eyebrow.
And the poison enters the system.
And the reputation dies a slow, agonizing death. He says the less apparent venom is often the most deadly. We tend to think of wickedness as loud, violent crime, but here, in this psalm, the wicked are the gossips, the quiet destroyers.
And who are they shooting these poison needles at? Verse 4 tells us they shoot in secret at the perfect.
Okay, this brings up a theological issue. We're Reformed. We believe in total depravity. We believe that there is none righteous, no, not one. So who is the perfect?
David can't be calling himself perfect. We know about Bathsheba. We know his history. He was far from it.
Spurgeon makes the crucial distinction. He says, first and foremost, this applies perfectly to Christ. Jesus was the only truly perfect one, and he was the ultimate target of slander. They called him a glutton, a drunkard, a blasphemer, a friend of sinners.
But it also applies to the believer.
Yes, in a different way. Spurgeon says believers are relatively perfect, meaning they are sincere, they are upright. Their standing is perfect because they are clothed in the righteousness of Christ. But here is the tragedy, and I think every Christian needs to hear this. Your uprightness does not protect you from slander. In fact, it provokes it.
Because darkness hates light.
That's it. If you are upright, you stand out. Your life is a quiet rebuke to the world around you. And because we aren't absolutely perfect, because we still have flaws and make mistakes, the enemy seizes on those flaws to discredit our general uprightness. They find the chink in the armor and drive the sword in.
And the method they use is pure cowardice. Shoot in secret.
They won't fight in the open field. They're snipers. They skulk in the bushes. And notice the timing. Suddenly, do they shoot at him?
It's an ambush.
It is. Like a wild beast pouncing from a hidden place. They give the victim no chance to defend himself. You wake up one morning and your reputation is in shreds, and you didn't even see the archer. You don't know where the arrow came from.
Spurgeon gets incredibly heated here. You can feel his blood pressure rising as he writes this commentary. He says, "An open liar is an angel compared with this demon."
That is a strong statement. An open liar is an angel compared to a secret slanderer.
Why does he say that? What's the distinction?
Because you can confront an open liar. If someone stands in the town square and yells a lie about you, you can stand up and debate them. You can present evidence. There's a chance for truth to win in the court of public opinion. But the secret slanderer is like a snake in the grass. They bite and then they disappear. You can't fight what you can't see.
You're just left with the poison.
You are. Spurgeon says the devil himself might blush at being the father of such base offspring.
That's vivid. Now, there's another breakdown of this weaponization of the tongue here. It's from Jeremiah Burroughs. He was a Puritan preacher.
Yes, a member of the Westminster Assembly, a theological heavy hitter.
And he classifies the tongue into 3 distinct weapons: the razor, the sword, and the arrow.
It's a brilliant taxonomy of malice. Let's walk through it because it's so practical. First, the razor.
A razor implies shaving, getting close.
It implies taking off every little hair. Burroughs says this is the critic who notices peccadillos, small infirmities, tiny faults. This is the person who shaves you close. They don't make up big, outrageous lies. They just highlight every tiny flaw that a loving person would overlook in grace.
This is the person who says, well, the pastor's sermon was good, but did you notice he mispronounced that one Greek word?
Or, she's a faithful mother, but her car is always dirty. That is the razor. It doesn't kill you with one blow. It strips away your dignity by focusing on the irrelevant. It bleeds you to death with 1,000 tiny cuts.
Okay, so that's the razor. Then there's the sword.
The sword, Burroughs says, wounds deeply, but it is near at hand. This is the direct attack within your circle, the open insult, the angry confrontation at the office, the fight with a family member. It's painful, but at least you know who's holding the weapon.
And finally, the arrow.
The arrow hits at a distance. That's spreading rumors to remote places where you cannot defend yourself. It's sending the anonymous email to the boss's boss. It's posting the negative review online. It's talking behind someone's back to people they'll never even meet.
So you've got a complete system of destruction. Close range, medium range, and long range.
Exactly. And that leads us right into Section 3. We move from the weapon itself to the war room where the weapons are being planned. Verses 5 and 6, the conspiracy of evil.
Verse 5 says, they encourage themselves in an evil matter. This is the psychology of the mob.
And Spurgeon points out a really sad contrast here. He says, good men, godly men, are often discouraged.
It's true. In the church, in ministry, you see it all the time. We get downhearted so easily. We second-guess ourselves. We struggle to keep our spirits up.
But the children of darkness. Spurgeon says they are wise in their generation. They cheer each other on. They validate each other's malice. They egg each other on to greater evil.
It's an echo chamber of wickedness.
It is. If one of them starts to feel a twinge of conscience, the others immediately squash it. No, you're right to be angry. He deserves it. Tell us more. The text says they commune of laying snares. They pool their experience into a common fund of hatred. One person's bitterness fuels another's.
And they operate under this fundamental delusion. The text says they ask, who shall see them?
This is the practical atheism of the heart. They might profess to believe in God on Sunday, but on Monday, they live as if he is blind and deaf. They think because they are whispering in a dark room, no one hears. But history proves otherwise, time and time again.
Spurgeon brings up a very British example here to make his point, the gunpowder plot.
Guy Fawkes, right. The plot to blow up Parliament in 1605, it was deep, it was dark, it was incredibly secret. The conspirators took oaths of silence. They thought they had covered every single track.
But it was exposed.
It was laid bare at the 11th hour by an anonymous letter. Spurgeon says this is a pattern in history. The stones of the field cry out. Great plots are usually exposed because truth has an ally in reality itself. You can't build a fortress on lies. The foundation always cracks. Someone talks. Someone gets a conscience.
He quotes that line from Numbers, "There is no enchantment against Jacob."
Meaning, you can use all the dark magic and secret plotting you want against God's people, but there is a sovereignty check. If God decides to expose you, the toils of the net are broken. The scheme falls apart.
But man, they try hard. Verse 6 says, they search out iniquities.
This is the diligence of malice. This is one of Spurgeon's most cutting observations. He says they show as much avidity, which means eagerness, to ruin a good man as explorers searching for buried treasure.
Imagine if they put that energy into something good.
That is the tragedy of the fallen human nature. They will work harder to go to hell than some Christians work to go to heaven. Spurgeon says they cry, "Eureka! I have found it," when they finally discover a new method of vengeance, a new lie to tell.
He uses the image of the Inquisition here to talk about the skill of evil.
He does. And it's a chilling point. He talks about the instruments of torture. If you look at those devices historically, the rack, the Iron Maiden, the thumbscrews, they reveal a profound, a dark level of engineering.
Someone had to sit down and design those things.
Someone sat down with blueprints and did the math on how to cause the maximum amount of pain without killing the victim too quickly. It reveals the skill of the human mind when it's bent toward cruelty. We are creative beings made in God's image, but when we are cut off from God, that creativity can turn demonic.
So the believer is in a very dangerous spot. We are being hunted by skilled, diligent, cooperative enemies who have weapons ranging from razors to poisoned needles.
And if the believer were left alone, their condition would be hopeless. It would be utterly desperate. That's what Spurgeon calls the moan of unbelief. Reason looks at the situation and says, "I'm finished. They are too strong. They are too smart. Their conspiracy is too deep."
But faith sees something else. And that is the huge pivot in section 4, the divine retribution. Verse 7 starts with one of my favorite words in all of Scripture.
But
God.
two words that change everything.
But God shall shoot at them.
The great reversal. The imagery here is poetic justice in its purest form. The enemy has a bow. They've been bending it. They've been preparing their bitter words, but they forgot that God also has a bow.
The divine archer takes the field.
And notice the comparison. The wicked have to whet their tongues, they have to plan, they have to commune and encourage each other. It's hard work being that evil. But God, the text just says God shoots.
The timing is key. Suddenly.
Yes. Just as they plan to surprise the saint, suddenly do they shoot at him. God turns the tables. They are the ones who are taken unawares. In the middle of their plotting, in a moment of their triumph, the arrow arrives. Spurgeon notes the efficiency of God's judgment. One arrow from God is enough. He never misses his mark.
It reminds me of that scene in Indiana Jones where the guy comes out and does all the fancy sword moves, and Indy just looks tired, pulls out his gun, and shoots him.
That is a very apt, if modern, illustration. The wicked make a great show of their power, all this wetting and planning, and God's action is simple, sudden, and final.
Then we get to verse 8, which describes the weapon of their destruction. And this is just beautiful in its irony, their own tongue to fall upon themselves.
This is so fascinating. God doesn't need to create a new weapon to destroy the wicked. He doesn't need to call down fire from heaven every time. He just uses their own weapon against them. He turns their strength into their weakness.
Their words return to condemn them.
Spurgeon notes the physics of this metaphor. He says the tongue is, physically speaking, a light member of the body. It weighs almost nothing.
Just a few ounces of muscle.
Right. But when it falls on a man in judgment, it falls heavy as lead. Their own lies, their own slanders, their own bitter words come crashing down and crush them.
There's a quote here from Joseph Carroll, another one of those heavy theologians Spurgeon dug up. He says, "A man were better to have his house fall upon him than his tongue."
Think about that. That's an incredible statement. If your house falls on you, it kills your body. It's a tragedy, but it's over. But if your tongue falls on you, if your own lies and slander come back to haunt you, it destroys your soul. It destroys your reputation forever. It leaves you in a state of living shame.
It's the boomerang effect. You throw the slander out, and it just swings right back around and hits you in the face.
Spurgeon even quotes Shakespeare here, which I love.
I saw that from Macbeth.
Yes, he references the bloody instructions which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. It's the concept of the poison chalice. You mix the poison for your enemy, but divine justice commends the ingredients of our poison chalice to our own lips.
We see this in politics all the time. Someone starts digging up dirt on an opponent, and in the process, their own dirty laundry gets exposed.
That's it. The trap they laid for others becomes their own snare. And when that happens, when the slanderer is exposed and destroyed by their own lies, there is a public reaction. Verse 9 says, "And all men shall fear."
It's undeniable at that point.
The judgment is so clear, so public, that even the most illiterate, as Spurgeon puts it, can understand the lesson. He compares it to the Red Sea again. When Pharaoh was overthrown, the news spread and the Canaanites trembled. They didn't need a theology degree to understand that God was fighting for Israel.
And Spurgeon says, they sinned secretly, but the punishment is wrought before the face of the sun.
The secret plot becomes a public spectacle, God turns the lights on, and everyone sees the cockroaches scatter.
And that leads us to the final state of affairs in section 5. The outcome for the believer in verse 10. The righteous shall be glad in the Lord.
Now, we need to be very careful here. Spurgeon and the other commentators are very clear on the nature of this joy.
It's not schadenfreude. It's not taking pleasure in someone else's misery.
Exactly. It is not, haha, I told you so. It is not a selfish, sensual, gloating over the enemy's pain. That would make us just as wicked as them.
So what is it then?
It is gladness in the Lord. It is a rejoicing that justice has been upheld. It is the relief of seeing the moral order of the universe affirmed and restored. When a tyrant falls, the people rejoice, not because they love death, but because they love liberty. This is a joy in the character of God.
The verse also says they shall trust in him.
Because the observation of providence increases faith. When you see God intervene like that, when you see the divine archer take the shot and hit the bullseye, your trust for the next battle is strengthened. You realize, okay, God really does have this.
Now, I want to spend a minute on this phrase here, the upright in heart. Because John Donne, the great poet and preacher, has a note on this that is just, well, it's geometry, but it's beautiful.
Oh, this is marvelous. I love when Spurgeon pulls in Dundon. So the word for upright in Hebrew is jashar. It implies a direct, plain way, a straight line. We use the same idea when we talk about a straight shooter or a straight arrow, someone who is honest and direct.
Okay.
Simple enough. But Dunn gets into the geography of it. He says, look at the earth. The earth is round. It's a sphere.
Right.
Therefore, geographically speaking, no step you take on the surface of the earth is truly a straight line. Every step you take is actually the arc of a massive circle. You are always walking on a curve.
Because of the curvature of the earth. I'm with you.
Okay, so Dunn applies this spiritually. He says, look, we are human. We live in a fallen world on a curved spiritual plane. We have infirmities. We have variations. We're like a compass that doesn't point to true north perfectly because of all the magnetic interference around it.
We wobble. We deviate from the path.
We wobble. We aren't perfect. But Dunn argues that he who comes as near to uprightness as possible, he whose heart intends to go straight, whose general trajectory is towards God, even if he stumbles, he is the upright man.
That is so helpful. Because if upright meant morally perfect without any deviation, then none of us would qualify.
We would all be disqualified immediately. But God looks at the heart. Is your heart jashar? Is it set on the straight path, even if your feet stumble on the curve of this world?
And for those who are upright in that sense, the text says they shall glory.
The etymology here is key. The Hebrew word is halal.
Which is where we get the word.
Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Halal means to shine out, to be clear, to be brilliant.
So when it says they shall glory, it doesn't mean they are boasting about themselves?
No, not at all. It doesn't mean they're strutting around saying, look how great I am, I survived. It means they shine with a holy, reverberating admiration of God. They reflect his light. They become like mirrors showing forth his glory.
Spurgeon says it is a praise they shall receive for having served God.
Yes, it's a communal thing. The victory of one oppressed saint is the victory of all upright men. When one stands, we all shine a little brighter. We share in the glory of God's vindication of his people.
Spurgeon ends this whole section with a bit of a warning, or maybe an admonition is a better word. It's a very practical point.
He brings it right back to our prayer life. He says the best way to benefit others, to help the church, to help your family, to help the world, is to be earnestly prayerful for ourselves.
That sounds counterintuitive. We are always taught to pray for others, to be selfless.
And we should. Of course we should. But Spurgeon's point is about structural integrity. He says our godliness puts weight and substance into our testimony. If I want to help you, the best thing I can do is first ensure that I am walking closely with God. If I am preserved, if I am holy, if I am safe in that secret place, then and only then am I in a position to be useful to you.
It's the oxygen mask principle on an airplane. Put your own mask on first before you try to assist others.
Precisely. If I pass out, if I fall into sin or despair because I neglected to pray for my own preservation, I am no good to you or anyone else. I become a liability to the body of Christ, not an asset. So praying, preserve my life, isn't selfish. It can be an act of service to the whole church.
That is a really solid place to land. It validates the need for personal spiritual survival.
It does. It's foundational.
So we have traveled quite a distance in this deep dive. We started with the secret whispers of the enemy, the plotting in the dark room. We looked at that terrifying arsenal, the whetted sword, the long-range arrow, the poisoned Venetian needle.
We saw the conspiracy of the mob cheering each other on in their evil, thinking no one could see them.
And then the pivot. But God, the divine archer steps in, the sudden arrow of God that turns their own weapons back on them.
Ending in the gladness of the saints, the shining out of the upright in heart.
What is the one thing you want the listener to walk away with today? If they forget the Venetian needle and the geometry of John Donne, what should they remember from Psalm 64?
I think it's the concept of the safe house. We spend so much energy trying to build our own defenses. We try to out-argue the slanderer. We try to outmaneuver the plotter. We try to be smarter than the mob. But David doesn't do any of that.
He just prays.
He prays to be hidden. The safe house for the believer is not in our own punning or our own counterattacks. It is in the secret place of God's providence. We hide in him. We let him be the archer. We stand still like Moses at the Red Sea and let the salvation of the Lord unfold before our eyes.
And we let the salt of faith cure our fear while we wait.
That's it.
You know, that thought from Spurgeon earlier is going to stick with me all week, that an open liar is an angel compared to a slanderer. It really reshapes how we view polite gossip in modern society. We tend to think the loud, brash sinner is the biggest problem, but maybe the real danger to the church is the quiet, polite whisperer in the corner.
It forces us to examine our own conversations. Are we using the razor on people? Are we shooting arrows from a distance with our keyboards? Or are we striving to be the upright, the Jashar, who shine with the glory of God?
A heavy question, but a necessary one. Thank you for walking us through this, and thank you all for listening to this deep dive into Psalm 64. This has been Reformed Thinking. Until next time, trust in the divine archer.